Yep, we can hear you.
Fantastic. Well, welcome to our exciting evening. We're here to celebrate Leah and the launch of her new books, which is amazing. I'm so glad that you're here, and we're obviously joined on Zoom by people from all over the world. So I think in the room, you can wave at this camera here, and they can see you there. Oh, in a moment. Oh, there you go. So they can see you there. And also on Zoom, to let you know that we have a screen to our side, we can see you. So that means if you're in the room or on Zoom, you can't pick your nose at any point during the evening because you are being viewed by everyone else. So we're all settled in. Is that okay? Are we ready to go? Wonderful. Well, there's a few things we're going to do this evening. We're going to interview Leah. Leah's going to come up and share a little bit about her process and the books that she's written, and we're really excited to hear all about them. We've got an amazing keynote speaker. We've got Gemma Hunt here with us this evening, and she's going to come and share, which is amazing, on why children need stories. And then there's going to be an opportunity for you to ask Leah a question, any question about any topic. Leah is a phenomenal agony aunt. So if you're going through a relationship problem, if you need budgeting advice on Zoom, I don't know if there's visa complications, any question. And so I need you to be thinking about the question, because we all know that moment when you say, right, does anyone have any questions? And all of your questions instantly leave your mind in that moment. So on Zoom, if you have a question throughout the evening, you can put it in the chat section, and April will be curating those questions in the room. If you think of a question, you can put it on your phone. And then when it comes to the moment, it will be zero awkward. Can we aim for that? Is that okay? Yeah. Amazing. And then we're going to pray together at the end. We're going to have a blessing over the books, and they're going to go out into the world and the impact that they're going to have. There's going to be the blessing, and then that's going to be followed by the buying. We're all going to buy the book, and you're going to buy it online, and we're going to buy every copy that's here. We're going to sell out. You're going to sell out the internet as well online. And that's the aim, really, is just to build you all up to that moment where we buy the book. So it's all a facade just to get us there. No, it's not. It's not. But anyway, just wanted to welcome you to the space. If you're in the room, the bathrooms are just outside where you came in. They're there. You can find them. I'm sure it's not that complicated. We're not planning to have a fire alarm, so if you hear lots of sirens go off, please leave the way you came in and wait outside. Zoom, if there's a fire alarm on the internet, I can't help you. I don't know what to do. It's probably a hacker or something. But April has assured me that she will solve all of your IT problems. If your computer goes down, just call her. She'll help you out there. So that's the housekeeping. We're also taking photos in the room. And if that makes you feel uncomfortable for any number of reasons, speak to Leah and she can solve that afterwards. But we're in for a wild ride. We're going to have a wonderful time together. It's going to be fun. It's about family. It's about connecting in, understanding the heart behind the book. But we're going to get Leah up first. She's going to talk to us. But I'm going to introduce Leah. Can I introduce her for a moment? Is that okay? I've known Leah since I was 12 years old. We go way back. Leah has played an important role in my life. I have been following her literary career from the moment she started writing blogs online, Moments with Motherhood, and different books that she's released. And we've been on a journey, Amy and I, with the family. And I have had one of my most embarrassing moments in Leah's presence. Can I tell you about that? Is that okay? Leah wrote a formative blog on the art of tea making a long time ago, and it was very detailed, and it really shaped me as a British man to understand the true process of making a cup of tea. And Amy and I were dating at the time, and we invited Leah and Dave and the family to come to Liverpool, and we were all hanging out together, sitting around the table. And I was so nervous to be in the company of such a celebrated author, mentor, educationalist, mother, influential, international, hopefully best-selling author one day. This moment that I was making a cup of tea in front of this author who had written the book on how to make tea, and I accidentally poured the milk into the teapot as the tea bag was stirring. Now, online, if you're from the States or any other countries, you might not understand the severity of the crime, but the awkwardness in the room was palpable in that moment, and it was round the table. And I went red, and I thought, Leah, I'm so sorry. I don't know how we can recover from this moment. I don't know how we can recover, but we have. And we've played an amazing role in mine and Amy's life. We'd come and hang out with Dave and Leah. We'd spill our problems. We'd stay up until 1 a.m. and Dave would solve them while Leah slept on the sofa next to him. Would wake up mid-conversation and deliver wisdom that made Dave sit down and be quiet and solve the problem. And then she went back to sleep again. And we've just known Leah just to be a source of comfort, support, wisdom, inspiration. I know many of you in the room have known her to be a faithful friend and inspirer and just a wonderful person. And we're all here to just say we love you. We're proud of you. We're amazed to see what God is doing through your life. And we can't wait to explore the content together. So ladies and gentlemen, on Zoom and in the room, would you welcome Leah?
Thank you, Mike. Thank you so much. That was a beautiful welcome, and I don't remember that tea thing, so don't worry, it didn't linger with me. Thank you so much for coming. Yeah, your presence is just an incredible encouragement. There's so many faces from various kind of parts of my life, and you being here is, yeah, just a huge hug and a huge just encouragement, really. And I just want to quickly as well say thank you to Daniel for letting us from Samaritan's Purse. Give us a wave, Daniel, who's just there. Daniel is the executive director of Samaritan's Purse and the Billy Graham Evangelistic Association here in the UK, who said, do the book launch here, do it in this building. So thank you for that, Daniel. And I'm glad you're here with your lovely wife, Barbara. I've been so encouraged and great to have so many colleagues here as well tonight. So it has been a pretty epic 18 months of writing, editing, and now marketing and promoting a series of 3 books. And I was doing all this while starting a new part-time job and moving through huge life transitions. One of those was including wrapping up my long career as a home educator. So huge changes, but we are here. My heart is full. I'm a little bit tired. My house needs a good tidy. But as my incredibly patient husband said to me this morning, it has all been worth it. Now, I'm not saying that children are like books are like children. Some people compare publishing to childbirth, but honestly, it's worse. It's absolutely worse. You see, with a baby, you get to decide who holds them and who they are passed around to, but it's quite different with a book. But with anything, as with anything that I've held and carried for a time, I open my hands and I give it back to the Lord. And there's an intentional dedication of this work to him. And that's what a book launch is to me. And that's why I'm so glad that you're here, because tonight is about a moment of marking, of celebrating and dedicating this series to God. So we're going to do that, a whole series. There are 3 books, only 2 are available right now, and you can pre-order the 3rd one, and that one will be coming out in August. It happens to come out, so you'll see Ina, Sarah Forbes, Vanessa. Sorry, you can't see her here. Well, I should bring the cardboard cutout out, should we? And I'll talk to you about her in a moment. But the 3rd book comes out on the 5th of August, which for those who know me is my birthday. And it's a really big birthday this year. I'm going to be 30. Again. So that's exciting. I'll talk to you more about that in a moment. So this series began with a conversation with my literary agent, who got behind the idea right away. Joy, my literary agent, is incredible and so enthusiastic. I don't know if she's online, but Joy, hey, if you are. I told her I wanted to write Charlotte Mason's story for children, and she immediately saw the potential for something bigger, a full series. So when we started pitching to publishers, we actually had a list of 10, so not just the one. I'm incredibly privileged to be publishing with Moody Publishers, and just last week I was able to visit the offices in Chicago. I met many of the team. I recorded at the Moody radio station, and the amazing thing was, which was really humbling, is to see my books scattered around their office, because on the month of all the books that are coming out that month, all the staff get free books. So wherever I walked in the Moody offices, I could see Chronicles of Wonder and Angel Orphan across people's desks in North America. So that was incredibly encouraging and amazing to see. Writing books can often feel quite lonely, but it's never a solo affair. And there are so many people involved. And I just want to say a few things. Some of them may be watching online or may watch the replay, but I'm incredibly grateful to Catherine, my acquiring editor, and Amanda, my editor, who they not only worked through all 3 books with me, often on a really, really tight schedule, because 3 books, 18 months, I'll just keep saying that, but also taught me invaluable lessons about writing. Marketing and publicity, led by Jacob and Christiane, they've been right there in the trenches with me, working and still working. We're still very much live, doing it all across March, to get this series into the hands of children and families. And thanks to Jacob again, he may be online. You have to let me know if he is, guys. We have the banner and the life-size cardboard characters to take photos with. You can take some selfies with those later on. He got all those ready for us. But I won't go into all the thank yous right now. But I can't go any further without mentioning my family, my amazing family, and especially Dave. Give us a wave, Dave. So Dave has endured all the emotional states I cycle through when writing and editing a book. And he's watched me do it with all 3. Now, I don't want to distract us from what we're here for this evening, but many of you might know, some of you won't. But Dave actually has a book coming out as well on Tuesday with 10 of those. And it's called What You Were Made For. So, yeah. So we have got a stock of these tonight. Dave doesn't know this at all. I have bought a stock, and this is for your teenagers. So you can buy these for your middle grade and these for your teen. Well, I'll tell you what we're going to do with them, actually. So your guide to finding purpose, what you were made for. This comes out on Tuesday. And what we're going to do tonight, for the first 20 people who buy 2 books, you get a free copy of Dave's book as well. So there we go, Dave. And so Dave was saying to me this week, he said, I've seen something online, 10 of those, I've got socks. How do I get a pair of 10 of those socks? Sienna. So this is to show everybody online. Dave, well done for your book coming out. You also have a pair of 10 of those socks. So bless him. Okay, so back to the series while Dave is trying his socks on. So tonight we are celebrating the tales of boldness and faith. And this is a series of fictionalized biographies for children around the age of 8 to 12. And though they can be enjoyed by anyone, whether reading alone or aloud. And a recent reviewer who read Chronicles of Wonder, so the book about C.S. Lewis, she was reading it to a 6-year-old and a 15-year-old, and she shared this. You can see this on Amazon. Both my 6-year-old and my 15-year-old have repeatedly expressed their enjoyment of this book. Completely unprompted, my youngest eagerly narrates each chapter and loves discovering the books that shaped C.S. Lewis, whilst my teen immediately asked, I hope she writes about J.R.R. Tolkien next. As a family of readers, we feel a new sense of connection to Lewis through his favourite books. The writing is clear, engaging, and so well researched that for once, I didn't find myself mentally critiquing a modern book. Thank you, Jesus. I just got to enjoy the story alongside my kids. We've already purchased the rest of the series. So maybe this lovely lady is online. Thank you for that encouragement. And I love that she was reading it to a 6-year-old and a 15-year-old at the same time, and it shows the scope of the book. It's so special to hear these stories. So many of you know I spent almost 2 decades educating my 4 children from home. It was one of the most delightful and rewarding seasons of my life. And we read and read and read. And one of the greatest genres that we love, both as read alouds and independent reading, were the gorgeous 1940s fictionalized biographies of missionaries, artists, scientists, and explorers. And when I sat down with Moody via Zoom to talk in depth about the possibility of them taking on this series almost 2 years ago, I held up these books in my hand and said, this is what I want to write for the next generation. And as much as I love vintage books, you guys know I love vintage books. quite passionately, in fact. I don't believe that our children and grandchildren should have to hunt these stories down in dusty old secondhand books, blowing off the dust, looking for them, scouring Abe Books or whatever sites will be available to them then to hunt for a bargain. I mean, I want them to do that as well, but let's write these new stories that will sit alongside the old, continuing to tell the truth and beauty of humanity submitted to Christ Jesus. Let's share the stories of their lives because of him. So I want to introduce you in this little bit of time to Jack, Charlotte, and Ina. 3 lives that didn't begin in England, yet whose journeys brought them here, making them part of our history. All 3 experienced grief, displacement, and loss at an early age. Yet they also encountered kindness, the joy of learning, and the love of Jesus as they grew into adulthood. Charlotte Mason was a revolutionary British educator at a time when children were expected to be seen and not heard. She treated them as persons, her word, born in the image of God, not as problems to be fixed or lumps of clay to be molded. She believed that given the right atmosphere and stimulus, children would reveal themselves in ways we are privileged to witness. Our role is to stand at the front row of their great unfolding, to see who God has made them to be and to cheer them on. And there's Jack, better known to the world as C.S. Lewis. A boy with an insatiable love for stories. He filled his childhood with books, often retreating into the imaginary world of Boxen, which he created with his brother, Warnie. His early years were marked by loss, first with the death of his mother and later through the upheaval of boarding school. But Jack's story is one of transformation, of how faith and imagination collided, leading him to become one of the most beloved writers of the 20th century. And I'm going to read a little bit to you from Chronicles of Wonder. And this is a part of the book where Jack and Tolkien are sat in the famous pub, the Eagle and Child, which they called The Bird and Baby. And they're discussing a book that you might recognize. The Eagle and Child pub, nestled in the heart of Oxford, was another haven for the Inklings at the start of each week. Depending on lecture schedules or the rhythm of their academic pursuits, the group's number changed week to week, but their presence was a constant in the popular pub. Their lively chatter filled the air, often so loud that Wynne, the pub's no-nonsense landlady, ensured the back room was reserved for their exclusive use. As they stepped into what was affectionately called the rabbit room, the welcoming crackle of the fireplace greeted them. Wooden panels lining the halls, adding a touch of old world charm to this unique space. Sturdy tables and stools stood ready, inviting the Inklings to pull up a seat and join the lively conversation. Above the fireplace, an antique clock ticked away the moments, its steady rhythm echoing around the room. With the warm glow of the fire, the clink of glasses and the comforting creak of the wooden floorboards, the Inklings felt at home, ready to dive into another interesting conversation. Jack and Tolkien were fixtures at the Eagle and Child, their familiar faces greeted with a nod of recognition from both customers and staff alike. As they settled into their usual corner, it was as if they owned the place, their presence a reassuring sight in the bustling pub. One day, as the two met, the hours slipped away unnoticed while they were deeply engrossed in discussing a new book nearing the editorial stages. Immersed in their conversation, they lost track of both time and their surroundings. Tolkien's voice filled the back room as he read aloud to Jack. It had a perfectly round door like a porthole, painted green with a shiny yellow brass knob in the exact middle. The door opened onto a tube-shaped hall like a tunnel, a very comfortable tunnel without smoke, with panelled walls and floors tiled and carpeted, provided with polished chairs and lots of pegs for hats and coats. What's he reading from? The Hobbit. Well done. Jack was completely absorbed in the vivid description, which drew him into the world Tolkien was creating. Suddenly, the door creaked open and Wynne's familiar voice cut through the warm glow of their conversation. Are you telling Mr. Lewis about your new house, sir? She asked with a playful tone. Tolkien paused and they all laughed. I'd be so lucky, Tolkien replied with a grin. Sorry to interrupt, gentlemen, Wynne said, her voice carrying over the chatter of the pub. But you're planning to eat or drink anymore? I need to set this room up for darts, and it's already past 4 in the afternoon. I'm not sure if she was from Yorkshire, but we'll go with it. Poetic license. We're doing voices tonight. Jack and Tolkien exchanged surprised glances, realizing how late it had become. We're terribly sorry, Wynne, Jack said, feeling sheepish. We completely lost track of time. Wynne's smile widened. Lost in your book talk again, I see. Well, I hope one of you becomes famous for these books you're writing. We could certainly use the extra business. Tolkien snorted in amusement. We'll see, Wynne, he replied with a grin. But if we do, we will bring you a signed first edition copy. With that, Jack and Tolkien rose from their seats, donning their overcoats and hats as they bid farewell to the friendly landlady and the familiar faces around the bar. As they strolled back to college, Jack couldn't contain his excitement. You know, Tollers, he began, his voice tinged with admiration, your book is going to be a hit. Readers will absolutely adore it. Tolkien chuckled, reflecting a mixture of gratitude and humility. I hope so, he replied modestly. But honestly, Jack, your enthusiasm means the world to me. You've been my only audience for so long, the only one who believed in my stuff when no one else did. Jack's smile widened, a sense of pride swelling in his chest. Well, you've got talent, my friend, he said earnestly, and I can't wait for the world to see. As they continued walking, their conversation grew more serious. Jack looked at Tolkien with a thoughtful expression. With all the talk about war starting up again, it's hard not to worry about what might happen. One of the worst features is that eerie feeling of all this having happened before. Do you think people will still want to read stories if things get difficult? Tolkien thought for a moment, his brow furrowed. It's true, the world seems unsettled, with a chance of more conflict. But maybe that's why stories are so important. They give us a chance to escape, imagine better times, and hold on to hope. Jack nodded slowly, feeling reassured. Stories can help us feel better, even when things are tough. They show us what we might not see in real life. If they can bring some joy or hope, then they are definitely worth sharing. Tolkien smiled, looking hopeful. Yes, that's exactly the point. We'll keep writing and sharing them, no matter what happens. On that foggy late afternoon, just as the autumn darkness began to settle over the city, Jack and Tollers passed a Victorian gas lamp, so typical of those scattered around Oxford. Jack pointed to the lamp post and remarked, just look at that scene. It would make a splendid opening for a book. Tollers surveyed the view and replied, it would be perfect if it was snowing. The snow would add just the right touch of magic. There, thank you. A little taster of that one. And and then finally there is Ina, and you'll see her outside, who was better known as Sarah Forbes Bonetta. Her story is one of resilience, faith, and identity. Born a Yoruba princess, she was taken from her homeland at a young age and found herself in England, navigating a world entirely different from the one she knew. Yet through every challenge, she held onto her intelligence, strength, and the kindness of those who came alongside her. Hers is a story of endurance, of finding her place between two worlds, and of faith that shaped her path. Now, the book is still in edits at the moment. It's in the final stages, but I'm going to read a tiny bit to you before I wrap up. Nobody else has heard this before. So this is where Sarah, so I switched between her, Ina is her African name, and identity is an important part of this book. But she was known as Sarah Forbes Bonetta. So in the bulk of the book, we refer to her as Sarah. And this is where she meets Queen Victoria for the very first time. And she's around 6-7 years old. Finally, they reached a pair of grand doors, which opened with a slow creak. They were ushered inside a drawing room, and at the far end, standing near a grand fireplace, was Queen Victoria herself. Sarah's breath caught in her throat. The Queen was smaller than Sarah had expected, but her presence filled the room. She wore a deep black gown, her hair parted neatly down the middle, was tucked under a lace cap. Her skin was pale, her nose straight and sharp, and her eyes reminded Sarah of a hawk. Beside her stood her lady-in-waiting, dressed simply but still looking regal. To the Queen's side were her eldest children, Edward, who was 9 years old, and Victoria, who was 10, neither of them taking their eyes off Sarah. Captain Forbes bowed deeply, and Sarah quickly followed, lowering herself into a curtsy she had practiced so many times. "Your Majesty," Captain Forbes said with respect. Queen Victoria stepped forward, her gaze steady on Sarah. For a long moment, she said nothing, simply studying her. Sarah's heart pounded, her palms damp as she wondered if she had done something wrong. Then the Queen's lips curved into a kind smile. "So this is Sarah Forbes Bonnetta," she said. "I have heard so much about you." Her eyes moved over the faint markings on Sarah's face, and then to Sarah's shock, the Queen dipped into a graceful curtsy, a gesture reserved for royalty. "Obama Ina," the Queen addressed her, using the name from Sarah's past. "Princess." Tears automatically sprung to Sarah's eyes. She had been called that since leaving her homeland. The Queen straightened her gaze, kind but serious. "The markings on your face show your royal blood. I know you are now called Sarah, but that name also means princess. You may have changed your name, but your royal identity remains." Sarah's throat felt tight, but she managed to speak. "Thank you, Your Majesty," she said, her words formal, but her voice shaky. The Queen tilted her head slightly. "I'm told you're quite remarkable, Sarah," she said. "Captain Forbes has spoken highly of your intelligence and how quickly you have learned. It must be difficult adjusting to such a different life." Sarah swallowed hard, unsure what to say. It was true that she had worked hard to learn, but meeting the Queen herself made her feel proud and nervous. The Queen's expression softened. "Sarah, you are brave. Not everyone could handle all these changes the way you have. Courage is so important. Without it, we wouldn't be able to keep pushing forward or trying new things." She paused, her smile gentle. "Remember, all great achievements take time. Your courage, your strength will help you achieve wonderful things, even when it feels difficult. Patience and bravery together can take you far." There's a little tiny excerpt of Sarah's book. So I'm not going to say much more because we are going to have a little bit of Q&A later, and I want to get Gemma up. But I just want to say again, thank you so much for celebrating with me tonight. And my hope and prayer is that these stories encourage and inspire faith and boldness in the hearts of all those who read them. So that's it for me and for now, and I'll hand you back to Mike.
Amazing. Thank you, Leah. I'm sure as Leah was reading, there was questions sparking in your mind. So I'm going to remind you again that you will be called on for a question at some point. So please be making a note. But we're really honored to have Gemma here with us. And I'll just briefly let you into Gemma's past and her journey here to this moment. Gemma started off in ballet at a young age, showing a talent for performance and local theatrics in the local stage, and then went on to university to study media and performance and got a first-class degree, which, you know, that does not go without a big round of applause. And it started there, but then it got better. Gemma got a role in CBBC, where she presented Exchange, Smile, and Best of Friends, and went on to report from places far-flung like Ghana and Buckingham Palace, even at Wimbledon, and hosting the Blue Peter Proms with Sir David Attenborough, which is amazing. And then in 2013, Gemma became the face of Swashbuckle, which we've all watched. There you go. There's some fans at the back. and has featured on our screens in a variety of shows that we've all grown up loving and watching, and on the stage at events such as Big Church Festival and New Wine, and on our TV with Songs of Praise and various other things. It's been quite the career. You've also been a celebrated author, writing books, C, Let's Be a Good Friend, and C, Let's Be Me. But really the pinnacle is tonight. It's all led to this moment, Gemma, where you can address Leah Bowden's book launch. And so we're honored to be at this moment in your career and to welcome you as you encourage us why children need stories. Gemma Hunt, everybody.
What an intro. It's always really humbling to be reminded of what I've done. Wow, God is good. Amen. Oh, Leah, well done you. That was so beautiful to hear you reading from your book. So inspiring, and I cannot wait to read the third one. Thank you for inviting me here today. Hi, everyone watching at home. Can't help but look straight down the camera. It's what I do. Yeah, Leah asked me to share a bit on why children need stories. And I had to start with my favorite storyteller, Jesus. Right? Because Jesus told stories. And they're the ones that I grew up listening to, that I loved and I still adore day in, day out. What wonderful stories that Jesus told. And he spoke in parables to make big points really easily digestible to us, so that we could understand these huge ideas that our relatively small minds could just comprehend them in a way that we could relate to them. Things like the lost coin, the lost sheep, the widow's mite, these stories that we look at and we know exactly what they mean without having to go into the real detail. And also, I love the fact that Jesus knew the importance of speaking to children. There's a teeny tiny one in here today. You look so cute back there. And some slightly bigger ones, and some slightly bigger ones, and even bigger ones at the back here. And like, we are all children. And I love it that in Matthew 19, Jesus says, let the little children come to me. Do not hinder them, because the kingdom of heaven belongs to them. I think that's so interesting that Jesus is saying the kingdom of heaven belongs to the little people. Let's invest in the little people. Let's sit down and read stories to them. And like C.S. Lewis said, we were all children once. Some of us still are. Dressing up as pirates on kids' telly. Oh, thank you very much. Oh, there we go. You can really hear me now. And I just love the fact that we get to be childlike and to not be childish, but childlike in our listening to stories. And it's so exciting. And I love it. I often do kids' birthday parties, and I'm proper old school. We'll play things like Pass the Parcel, musical statues, and I will read stories to the children. And I look up, and the kids are sat here, like looking at me like this. And the parents behind are like that. Because when, as adults, do we have stories read to us? Very infrequently. We're often the ones doing the reading, but we understand the power of stories. And I love the fact that when I'm doing these kids' parties, the parents are probably enjoying it just as much or maybe more than the children are. So I want to look at a couple of points. And why do children need stories? Well, it unleashes their imagination. They get to paint their own pictures. Especially like my daughter says, Mummy, there's no pictures in here. I'm like, I know, they're in there. And they're going to look different to the ones that I create. And actually, I had my first experience reading the Narnia books as an adult, believe it or not. And I had the most vivid dreams after reading those stories. It would be my bedtime reading, and I went places in my dreams because of what my mind was creating in my imagination as I was reading these stories. And I also last year read one of my favorite authors, apart from Leah, Roald Dahl's Charlie and the Chocolate Factory to my daughter. And I was so excited because I uncovered all of my original books from when I was little that I paid for with my pocket money. And I read them to my daughter, and we started with Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. And I loved reading it to her because, again, there's a couple of Quentin Blake's illustrations in there, but not a lot. So we had to really paint the pictures in our mind. And then we thought, you know what? Let's watch the original Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. Like, we're brilliant. And me and my husband were sat there. We're so excited to show this to you. You're going to love it. You're going to love it. And our 8-year-old daughter sat there like, that's not right. What do you mean that's not right? That's not how it says it in the book. Oh, yeah. Because we read the book to her first. She'd created this amazing picture in her mind that was better than the Gene Wilder movie. Like, wow. And that is such an iconic movie. But in her 8-year-old mind, she'd made it better. It wasn't good enough. So they get to use their imaginations and paint a better picture. So why do children need stories? Well, they need escapism and freedom. They get to go off into a fantasy world, somewhere completely different, or they get to experience somebody else's world and see life from a different perspective. They also get to go somewhere where they can go without judgment and without accountability. That's where books can take us. That's why stories are so crucial. And that was one for me. I loved Beatrix Potter. And I wanted to be Mrs. Tiggywinkle. And even as a little girl, I thought that I could be a hedgehog. Because the way that Beatrix Potter personified these characters, to me, I could be like her. And then I found a lady in our home church called Pauline, who is Mrs. Tiggywinkle. To me, she just personifies how I imagined her to look. And it's just wonderful that that was a book that took me there. So when I met this lady, I thought, oh, you're just like Miss Tiggywinkle, I love you. And it helped me to bond with her, actually, because that's how I instantly felt like I had some connection with this amazing woman. Why do children need stories? Well, they need comfort and reassurance. Self-help books come with testimonies to give hope, to give encouragement, advice or care into our own personal situations. And for those of us that are big kids, help us to deal with bad relationships, abuse, substance abuse, emotional, physical abuse. They're people's stories that give us hope. So even us big kids, we need those stories too. Other testimonies have definitely given me hope over the years. When I was working in television, I decided to date one of my co-presenters who didn't love Jesus. And at the time, I thought it was great, but it wasn't great for me. And so then I went through a whole time of looking through self-help books. How can you be the one to make this relationship better? How can one person make sure they are championing the relationship and making sure it soars? And all these books I read, other people's stories that gave me hope. I thought I could flirt to convert, and it didn't happen. I'd read it in other people's stories, but no, it wasn't right for me. But they were really encouraging at the time and things that I needed to hear. But ultimately, God knew better for me, and I found myself a guy that loves Jesus. Hallelujah. Children need stories because it helps them to gain knowledge and wisdom. Amazing home educator mama over here, right? Superwoman. Spending that much time with her own children. And she's got, I mean, I'm sure they're beautiful, but you've got amazing hair. You haven't pulled it all out. But children need wisdom, right? And that's how we learn, again, through books, through stories. And it helps to broaden their perspective on so many other things. And it helps to educate and inspire their futures. Textbooks that have anecdotes in them that are so helpful for us to put into practice the theory that we actually read. So why do children need stories? They need it to gain understanding of other people and of their lived experience, and sometimes of themselves as well. And it can help us and encourage us to be a good citizen in society. The things that we can learn about other people, like these amazing people, how inspiring are they? Not just to us as adults, but as we read to our children or as they read these stories, they're going to be encouraged. They're going to get a greater understanding of somebody else's life. And there will be small nuggets in it that they can then apply to their own lives. And then they might have stories written about them in the future. How cool would that be? And they also are able to learn about and respecting other people's values. And I think that's something that we don't always give enough attention to. I think those of us in the faith community, we understand and we invest in our own faith, but how much do we know about our neighbour's faith? How much do we know what's important to them? Why do they celebrate what they celebrate? Let's speak to them. Let's get their stories so we can understand them and integrate and live alongside each other in society. There was a CBeebies show that I was very fortunate enough to be able to do the voiceover for, and it's called My First. It's still available on iPlayer, should you want to watch it. And they are just very short stories about my first something. So my first trip to the dentist, or my first pair of school shoes, or my first wedding, or my first Hanukkah. And my first Chinese New Year, my first Ramadan. And it was so inspiring because each and every one of these 12-minute short TV programs is a family story. So stories are in books, brilliant. They're on screen too, brilliant. And it's so wonderful to see and to go into somebody else's life, and the cameras went into their lives to see the family story and their lived experience. You get to live it with them. And it was so cool. And it's a great program that even grown-ups can learn from. I learned a lot in that voiceover booth, reading all the script to go alongside all the images for these programs. They were phenomenal. But it helped me to gain greater understanding. And little kids and us big kids, we need that. So why else do children need stories? Well, it gives them empathy in a very egocentric world. Because as children, the world revolves around them. Us as parents, we kind of allow that to happen because we're their caregivers, we're taking care of them. That's sort of what we have to do. But it allows them to see that we can see life through somebody else's eyes sometimes, and that we can show empathy to people when they're going through things that perhaps are tricky. And we can give them the tools to know how best to do that. And we can tell that again through stories. And things that have always touched me as a kid were watching things like Comic Relief and Children in Need. And it's so fun getting to wear your red nose or your pudsey ears and wearing spots on your face to school and raising money and getting covered in gunge or something to raise some money. But then you watch all these fun programs of all your favorite pop stars singing really silly songs. And then there's the story. There's the story of the child that this is actually helping. There's the story of the family and the community this is impacting. And then you realize what it's all for. And then you just feel the empathy because you understand it more because you've heard somebody's story. You know how much it means to them. This funding, this support, this charity. And that is phenomenal. Because stories are powerful, aren't they? And finally, why do children need stories? They need to be validated. They need to feel heard and seen through stories. And that was primarily my reason for becoming an author, because as a mixed race family, we just couldn't find any books that were representative of our family. And the funny thing is, when I met the publishers and we sat down to discuss the idea for the books, she said to me, I've never thought about a Black Jamaican grandmother having a white granddaughter. I said, that is my family. My mum is Jamaican. My dad is English. I'm mixed race, married to a white English guy. We have a white daughter. So my mum, who's fully Jamaican, has a white, blue-eyed, blonde-haired granddaughter. And the publisher just had never thought about it because of her lived experience as a white middle-class lady. And so I thought, I definitely need to put something out there so that my daughter can feel seen when we sit down and read books together. And as a Christian family, I wanted to get some really good, solid on the gospel, really good theology, Christian books into our home that, again, she could relate to. I couldn't find any. So by the grace of God, I wrote some. And I said to Leah, I don't want to come and sell them tonight because this is your special nights. But I have got some leaflets that if you want to have a look, you're welcome to. Just to have a look. So the series is called See, Let's Be. And that's all about imitative behavior, imitating my favorite storyteller, Jesus, and the things that he did, and how imitating Jesus can help us to be a good friend, and how we imitate Jesus can help us to get over some of our big feelings and our emotions. And that's the book that's called Me. Let's Be Me, who God created me to be, my best version of me. So I just want to say, keep reading stories. Don't ever not have a book in your hand. They're so special. It's so great to have 2 or 3 books on the go at once. Take yourself to different places. When you need that escapism, put down your phone and the scrolling and pick up a book, a tangible book. E-reader, shme-reader, e-reader. Like, you want to actually have, Now, my husband, he's not watching online, so I can tell you this. He's a book sniffer. So he will open a book and he's like, oh, the pages of a book. And nothing beats that smell, right? You need to get a book in your hand, read someone's story, and also share yours. Share your story, what you're reading about, what you're learning with someone else. And it could be that your calling is to be an author. It's a cool club to be in, right? It might be that your calling is to speak to the person on the checkout and share a little bit of your story with them, or the person that you work with, or the person that you walk to school with, or maybe even one of your teachers or a partner or anything. Just share your story. They are so powerful. And there are a lot of powerful stories in this room and online. Bless you guys. Thank you so much for having me here.
Thank you so much. Can we thank Gemma again, please? Thank you so much. I have been called a book sniffer before, but under different circumstances, we won't go into that. So thank you again. Gemma will be around afterwards. If you, Micah, if you want to get any swashbuckle merchandise signed, you can bring it down and we can find out more about your books. So we're going to invite Leah to come back up. Amy, I wonder if you would be a Roma with a microphone. And we're going to launch into a question and answer session.
We are.
And April, are you prepped online? She's on.
She's thumbs
there.
up, thumbs up.
Are you going to say the questions loudly, or yes?
You'll hear us.
That's what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Great. So I'm going to start with a question. Then April, we're going to come to you with the second question, so you're ready. And then Amy, we're going to be in the room for the third question. So that's the order to start off. My first question: the book series is called Bold and Faith. They're the words you've used. Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Why?
Why? Why indeed?
What do those words mean to you? What do you hope to convey in
Yeah.
your series? What were you thinking there?
Well, I think that what I love about biographies and fictionalized biographies, and the ones I was reading to my children for years, is that you're not just kind of learning about stories and geography and history, but it's about character. And so we'd often learn about a decision somebody had made, or a choice they'd made that impacted the rest of their life or somebody else's life. And those decisions were often bold decisions. That's why people say we're reading stories about missionaries and explorers who had seemingly made these huge choices, but started with just one little decision. So I think the boldness is part of that, of just having this, capturing stories that help us understand whether it's large or small, that sometimes a good quality decision, a bold decision, can make a huge difference in your life and somebody else's. And I think, stories of faith are so key for us to continuously tell and to listen to and hear. And so that was important. That language was important for this whole series. Yeah.
Amazing. Great. April, do we have a question in the chat?
I do. The first question that was asked was for Leah. When was your first intro to Princess Anaya? I think I said that correctly. And how did you decide on these specific 3 people?
Great question. Hi, April. So Aina is how it's pronounced. The spell, it's got the A at front, but it's Aina. I was first introduced to the story of Aina when Sienna and I were reading it. So we found the biography And I was like, I've never heard of this before, read this story and just completely fell in love with it and was so inspired by her. And yeah, so when we began to talk about who the first 3 books in the series were going to be, I was like, I've got to have her, that she's one that I want to tell. And not just because she's inspiring, but because her story needs to be told and her story needs to be heard, and it's not widely known. I'm sure everyone in this room has heard of C.S. Lewis. Some of you will have heard of Charlotte Mason. If you're friends with me, you will have heard of Charlotte Mason. So we've got this. Oh, you want some more? We want some more. Okay, shall I just put it down? Just leave it there. Okay. Thanks, Prash. So we've got this mix of kind of very well known, very important to me and the community that I'm a part of worldwide. And then Sarah's story, I wanted to bring a new one out that would just like, hey, I want you guys, I want your children to know about Sarah Forbes Bonetta. Yeah. And at the time, let me tell you, at the time, it was interesting. Dave and I had discovered, I think we look at what films are coming out and stuff, but it may have been during the pandemic time, but Benedict Cumberbatch, is that how you say his name? Cumberbatch. He was interested in making a film about her. It hasn't come out yet. Who knows? It may come out. But people are interested in hearing more about her life. So we shall see. Who knows? Yeah.
Amazing.
Hello.
I wanted to ask, so you researched a great deal about these characters, these people that really existed, and you went to visit various places.
Yeah.
You would have written copious notes
Yes.
about all of the details of their very big lives.
Yeah.
And then you tried to distill it down into a short account.
Yes.
And then convey that to children as well.
Yeah.
So were there filters that you used when you were almost interviewing these characters, going through their lives? How were you deciding what to keep, what to leave? Was that a painful thing, leaving some things out? I imagine you've gone through this, you've got to know them so deeply, and then have to summarize.
Yeah.
What was the process like?
I have got to know them very deeply, and I can tell you, no spoilers, they all die at the end. Just saying. Did you not know? We go to the end of their lives, and you never really know what the impact of the writing process is going to have in you. But when I was writing and especially editing and sort of finalizing those last chapters in all of them, I wept. I felt like I journeyed for so long with these human beings who weren't just fictionalized and made up in my head, but they walked this earth. They lived the lives that we're living. They struggled with the things that we're struggling with. They found a faith in Jesus and hope and answers. And then I got to write and bring my own little twist to these final moments of their life, and it was really moving. You didn't ask me that though, did you? But that's how close I got. That's how I walked with them. So Charlotte Mason's story, I've been a student of her work for 18 years. That was the hardest because I felt like I knew her so well. Like, how do I put into 30,000 words to children? So then just really I guess the filter was, what would children love to hear about? What aspects of her life would they love to hear about? And the editing process with that one was hefty, but we got there, and I love what came out. And I hope that children, especially those who are educated using her ideas, I hope that they really love it and feel like they connect with her. Jack's story, as we call him, Jack, C.S. Lewis, that was an intentional decision. There is so much written on him, and everybody has their opinion on C.S. Lewis, and everybody has their favorite books, and So I decided, okay, again, these are books for children who love to read. Hopefully, and so I decided I read for about a year. Just every month I read a book on that C.S. Lewis had written, and then I began to read his biographies, and I started to pick up a theme of the books that had formed him, the books that he loved, and the books that he read as a child, and everything from Beatrix Potter through to Pilgrim's Progress and all in between. And so I decided we've got this story formed life, so I decided to choose, okay, I'm going to choose a book in every chapter that was part of his story. and that will tell his story. So that's how this book is drawn together, and through that weaving through obviously his biography. And Sarah Forbes Bonetta had a short life. She unfortunately died of TB. Again, I'm telling you all the spoilers, right? She died of TB in her 30s, and so and there isn't a lot written on her. So I devoured anything I could and prayed over that story, and just, what is it? How much of this do I share? Because it's a really hard story. What can we draw out from her life, of truth and history, but also hope? And that they were the filters for her book. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you. Is there any question in the room? Yes, Amy, we have a question over here with the roaming mic.
A quick sip.
Okay, I'll be brave. So this question's actually from my daughter who's studying to be an author.
Oh,
I
yeah.
asked her, have you got any questions? And it ties in with what you've just said. It's how do you balance the historical accuracy with strong storytelling?
Yeah, good question. Yeah, I was interviewed by somebody recently who said, I've had some followers who are nervous about the fictionalized aspect of these books. And I get it, if and I can imagine the people who were saying that. Bless them. So how it's a good story, right? Have a go. How do you balance that? The biography comes first. So the story, it was so important to me that I knew them well. And that was, I focused on getting to know them as individuals. How much can I get to know them? Read every biography I could, watched films if there were films made, which are often fictionalized anyway, but just kind of getting other people's ideas. But the biography came first, and I mapped out the book based on the biography and sort of wrote those aspects, many of those aspects. And then with those in place, kind of wove through what I saw and felt possibly could happen at that time. So yeah, I mean, some of my I've had lots of people reading before they were published. So I've had lots of early readers, lots of people involved with the process. It's really important to me that they were read by families and they read them out to their children before we went to the final edits. And I had one family who kept voice noting me and kept saying, my 9-year-old wants to know, is this bit true? And my answer is consistent, and it always will be. It could be. Yeah. So that's how it worked for me. Yeah.
Amazing. Any other questions in the room? Let's go.
Oh, thank you. That was great reading, by the way. I really enjoyed the Chronicles of Wonder. I was just wondering about your creative process in terms of, do you get up at a particular time and you go, I'm going to write for X amount of hours and do this and then do research? Do you have big gaps where nothing's happening? Do you tell Dave to leave you alone for a week and get it all done? So just that whole kind of creative, how that works, because you've written it in such a short space of time. So
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, let's keep it real. And Dave's looking at me going, are you going to tell the truth? I'd love to tell you that I rise before dawn and sit at my desk and overlook the park. And there's days when I've definitely done that. Writing them in this way and at this speed was intense, really, really intense. And so there were times when just life took over and I got nothing done. And then I was like, I've got to write. And I just would like zoom in and just spend days and days where everyone's, where's Leah? Where's Leah? Where's Leah? Get it done. And Dave would have to say to me, just sit down and get it done. Get it down. Do you need to go somewhere? What do you need to do? And so I had to learn. Dave and I are both writers, both authors, and he's brilliant at just sitting on the sofa with everything happening around him, and he'll just pull up a book. He'll just write a book, which I think is amazing. And I've kind of learned from him to sometimes not. I over romanticize the writing process, so I want this perfect situation. Anybody else like that? Yeah, I want tidy desk and lovely view and a candle burning and a coffee. And with these books. With Bottomless Mason, my first book, when I went to the Lake District for a week and had that kind of week to write. With these, I just would come home often, just sit at the dining room table, no matter what was going on around it. So there'd be laundry here and the dog's there, and I'd just open my laptop and write. And so I had to change, I had to learn how to just get on with it, which isn't, you know, very inspiring and romantic, but it is getting it done. Because I mean, so many writers, I've learned this from people like Anne Lamott. She just says, sit down in the seat, open, you can, you know, and just write. You've just got to write. And I think having a deadline and an editor saying, okay, I need those back, I need it back. I'm like, okay. So my process has changed is probably the short answer. And it's a little bit more learning how to create in the midst of normality. And that's probably the future for me. Yeah. Yeah.
Amazing. April, we're going to come to you.
Samantha's over
And
there as
we'll
well.
come back into the room. Have you got another question from the chat, April?
I do. I have a really good one. It is, out of the closest people in your life, who reminds you the most of the people that you wrote about in Tales of Boldness and Faith? This is a good one. We want to know.
You guys online. Yeah. That's a great question. I do you know what, April, that's really hard though. I don't really know how to answer. What I will say is that lots of people have been saying that Charlotte's picture looks like my Naya. She looks like Naya on there, which I think is quite sweet. Who do they remind me of? I honestly, I don't know. I don't know what to say. I haven't thought of them like that at all. I haven't tried to compare them to people I know. Who could compare C.S. Lewis to anybody they know? So I do apologize to the person who asked that question, but you'll have to email me and I'll think about it and I'll come back to you. It's a bit of a hard one for the spot, but a great creative question. Yeah.
Just to clarify for the room, you haven't considered anybody in your life as an intelligent author.
So, but for those who can't, for those who can't hear, my husband, Mr. Dave Bowden, has piped up. I think he'd like to compare him with C.S. Lewis or Charlotte Mason. He's been known as modern Mr. Mason. So
Amazing. Amy, we've got a question in the room, I think.
Samantha's just back there.
Yes.
Oh, I've missed listening to you read.
Oh.
We had many times in your living room where you would read the Bible to us all in our Connect groups. And you bring stories to life when you speak. And I think that's so important. My question is, I love reading biographies and autobiographies. Who living now would you like to write for kids?
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Who living now?
They can't die at the end.
Yeah.
What a happy ending, Leah.
I've got a theme at the moment. So yeah, that's a great question. Who? I think it would be, I would naturally go to a writer or a poet who I love. I'm trying to think of living ones because I'm still I read a lot of dead poets and writers. And so someone who died only a few years ago, so almost living, is Mary Oliver, who's one of my favorite poets. I would, love to learn more about her story and her life. She's amazing. But I think I would go down the artist, writer, poet path to find out more about people like that. So yeah, and again, all the ones that I love and admire and study are all dead. Another one I need to think about, Samantha, do you want me to write about you, Dave? Is that?
He'll die.
Yeah, I'd be quite cool to write my parents' story. That would be quite a lovely one to write. So yeah, we could write. I could definitely write your story, Mum. We could do that together, couldn't we? Yeah, that would be a lovely one to write. Yeah.
Amazing. I wanted to know, you write something and you put it out there into the world, and you've been on this journey to get to the point where it's produced and then it goes into the wide world. You can't control it.
Mm-hmm.
And you've had feedback from different people, comments coming in online. Has it surprised you how people have interacted with some of the content? What's been some of the feedback? Have people engaged with parts of the story that you maybe didn't think they would? Like, what's the reaction been? How has that measured towards your anticipation of that?
Yeah, I get very nervous about putting it out there. Really, really nervous, and even getting it to the point where you can send it out to people to endorse is just awful. Like, it's really hard. because you want them to like it. You want them to think it's the most amazing thing they ever read. But actually what you really want is real feedback. And for me, the big thing was when you read it to how do your children respond? Because for those of you who know the teaching philosophy that I've studied and have practiced for many, many years, part of that is what Charlotte Mason uses as phrase living books rather than textbooks. But she talks about books that tell a story and have a narrative, and they kind of, you open the first few pages and you want to move on, and then children can tell you about it afterwards. They can close the book, turn to their friend and their mother, their grandmother, and tell them all about it. That's the response I wanted from these. So to write it in that way, I put a huge expectation on myself, and I do feel the pressure of that. So it was difficult, but I eventually did get it out to lots of families in the UK and in the US, and they were kind and generous, but also helpful. And yeah, they you may have seen, some of you follow me online, I've had some brilliant endorsements and quotes from children, and my best one is from a young man who, Wilder, his name is, I think he was 9 years old, and his quote was, "Wow, not boring." That was my favorite.
Yeah, you made it.
That was my best feedback. Like, this is not boring. This is great. And another girl said, yeah, the homeschool moms are going to eat this up. I was like, yeah, that'll work for me. So the feedback has been great. I think they've enjoyed reading it to their families. Einar's book, I've had more input from the right people, and they really helped. They added a lot more to it and took some things away, and so you'll see all that when it comes. But that's been, yeah, brilliant. That had a different approach to that one.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Any more questions in the room? Yes.
I think you should have that as a sign on your wall, by the way. Wow,
Not
not boring. My question was, so I'm not a words person. I would struggle to hold all of that in my head, let alone write 3 of them. Did you have to write one, finish, write another one, finish, and then write the next? Or did you kind of dovetail it all together?
Yeah, good question. So the contract was for 3 books. I knew I had 6 months for each one. So the bulk of the main part of the work is the research and the reading. It may feel like, oh, it's the writing, but it's not. It's how well do I know these people so that I can then convey this message to a child. So I did tons of reading. I mean, reading books, audiobooks, everything. I was devouring podcasts, just whoever was next. I was finding everything I possibly could. And I love that. I thrive on that learning. I probably thrive on that more than the discipline of sitting down and getting the work done. So I could sit and tell you all about C.S. Lewis, but I had to get it in a book. So you were sit down and do it. So I did get to focus on one at a time. Charlotte Mason, I just knew her really well, but I had to then decide, what am I going to bring through? So I was still reading fresh some of her work and the biographies. But what began to happen, because 2 books came out at once, as we're doing this evening, there was an overlap in the writing and the editing, and then starting the promo, and that was when it got a little bit like, oh my goodness, this is crazy. That was hard, and that's when my mind was pretty full with I was finishing 1 book, so editing probably Angel Orphan, and right at the same time as writing Chronicles of Wonder, and that takes a lot of discipline. Just, okay, I'm going to focus on this one today, and yeah, it's hard, really hard. I've probably grown more than I realize actually in this process, and just learned a lot about myself, my writings, how I write, how I approach it, and my style of writing as well. But yeah, it was tricky. Yeah.
Amazing. April, do we have another question in the chat?
I
Not a hard
do.
one.
This is a really good one from Don Pape. So, how
Oh,
did
hi,
Leah
Dawn.
balance? Yeah, he's here with us. How did Leah balance the book's content and language for the UK market and the American readers, and even readers from all around the world?
Great question, Dawn. Hi, Dawn. Dawn is Dave's literary agent. He lives in Colorado, so he's fantastic. I'm so glad he's on. Great question, Dawn. How did I do that? And also because they're all based in England, all these stories as well. I think that my default is obviously, you know, I'm an English girl, so my default is to write from that place. But my editor is American, so we work together really well on. She would often say, "I'm not sure. Help me understand this." So I'm not sure. Could we word that differently for an American audience? That didn't happen a lot, actually. I think a lot of the stuff that we ended up bringing through works for both. And we have Americans here. You can tell me after you've read it. Does it? You've been living here long enough, Christine. You will know it all. So I think what I did, you know, I did go from the basis, obviously, of just being myself, but working with an American publisher was fantastic because I did get that. I got the other side, which helped sort of shape the book. But you know, I've traveled and worked with our friends in the States enough to sometimes be able to do that switch myself. I'm bilingual, you know. I can do the switch. So yeah, so it worked, and I mean, it seems that the thing is, C.S. Lewis is read by people all over the world, and he didn't change the way he addressed himself and how he communicated because it was to a wider audience. And so hopefully, you know, it still appeals and impacts people all around the world. I've heard people in Australia getting the book this week. They've been receiving it. People in South Africa have received the book recently. So it is starting to get out there, which is fantastic.
It's exciting.
Yeah, very. Yeah.
Any more questions in the room? Yes, just
I'm cheating because I kind of know the answer. Is there anything, especially looking in the past, that for you, you look back and go, oh, God was planting the seed that for me was leading to this?
Yeah. This is Poe's human mummy, by the way. Anybody doesn't know, everyone, lots of people online know my dog Poe because he comes online a lot. Anyway, this is my friend Christine. He started his life at her house, so in the car. No story. That is a great question, and yes, so I think part of my heart for these books is that they would go far and wide, and that it wouldn't just be. The reason why I said the Poe thing, because I'm trying to Christine. Yeah, you come up and answer if you know it. Part of my heart for these is not that just the stories of these individuals would go out because they're an amazing story, but that the story of Jesus would go out, and the impact of his life upon these people's lives. And they're so different and so nuanced, and getting to write that into the stories, getting to sew scripture into the stories, you know, feels like a missionary call. And that these books will go to places where I will never go and never be able to reach. And yet books get to do that. You know, books get to be in the hands of people who I could never speak to or smile at their children or anything. And so that seed was sown in childhood. Yeah, definitely. And I think that getting to do this, and when I started to dream up this idea, and when I first presented it to my literary agent, and I remember talking to Dave about it and to friends about it, and just remembering, I feel like this is something I'm always supposed to have done. I didn't know it looked this way. I didn't know this is how God would shape what was in me, but he did. And I'm in awe of that and so humbled by that. So yeah, and I think that sometimes those seeds that are sown in childhood and in young adulthood, and you keep carrying those through, and you're faithful just to see what happens, just to leave them and see, and then this happens. And so that is why, you know, at the end of our time, Naomi's going to pray over this series and pray over the impact of these, because that's the most important thing to me. Yeah. Thanks for that, Christine. Yeah.
Thank you. Any more questions online, April?
We did have Lauren that just said, thank you so much for inspiring others to tell rich, valuable stories for our children. Can't wait to receive the books in South Africa. So
That's brilliant. Thank you, Lauren. Yeah, that's good.
Well, I
Alright.
think we can pray.
Yeah.
I think we want to take a moment to pray, and we're going to invite Naomi, who's going to come up. And maybe your family could join you. I think that would be nice in this moment. And online, you can pray where you are if you're a prayer, and in the room, if you would stand. I think it's important to stand together, and we're going to honor God in the middle of this moment and stand together, Naomi.
Great. Oh, what an incredible family. It's been a beautiful evening, hasn't it? It's been so special.
Naya's online.
Oh, hey, Naya.
Yeah.
Where are you? Gallivanting somewhere beautiful. Italy. I see you online all the time, Instagram, living your best life, hey? It's been so special and it's a real honor. Do you know, I was just sitting there and I was reminded of that verse from Psalm 145 where it talks about one generation declares your works to another. And often we think that's just the Bible stories, but actually, our kids hearing our stories of faith, hearing these stories of faith is so inspiring. So we're going to pray this book does go far and wide, that it's massive blessing to your family personally. But I know this isn't about you prospering, it's about souls prospering, isn't it? That souls will prosper through this. And I just imagine 10-year-old girls sitting reading this book together, kids that might never hear the gospel, and somebody shares this book with them. How incredible that people will come to faith. So let's pray. God, we thank you that you are the creator first. You're a creative genius who spoke the world into being, God, and you put this creativity in each and every one of us, God. And we thank you for the creativity that's been unlocked in Leah in writing these precious books. God, I thank you for her heart behind them, that as she shared them and as she got emotional, the most important thing is that the seed of scripture will be planted in people's hearts. God, we know that your word says that it is an incorruptible seed. And God, I pray that as children read these books, as girls sit and discuss them together, as families come around it together, that the word of God is spoken in homes, is understood in homes, and that people will come to faith because of these books. And God, I pray as well that as people read the stories of boldness and courage and faith, that they will be inspired to live those lives too, that they'll be inspired to find the thing that sets them on fire, to find the thing that you have created them to do. God, will you unlock that potential in each person as they read these inspiring stories? God, I pray that as it goes far and wide, all across the world, people will come to know you. And God, I thank you for how you're using that missionary call that is on Leah's life to go to many, many nations. God, will you bless her? God, will you refresh her as she seeks to refresh others? Will you be true to your word that says, he who refreshes others will himself be refreshed. And God, as she's poured her heart and her soul into these books, God, I pray that she'll be refreshed on the other side, God, with any tiredness. God, as she enters a new season, a new decade this year, God, there is so much more to come. And I pray that she will see such hope in her future. In Jesus' name, amen.